Extra! Extra! Read all about it! Sculpture captures historical headlines in bronze. Extra! Extra! Read all about it!
Hello, my name is Bridgette Mongeon, and I am the sculptor of the life-size Newsboy. This video documents the inspiration and the process of its creation. On August 26, 2004, I was awarded the commission of the life-size Newsboy from the Texas Press Association. It was to be created in honor of their 125th anniversary. The life-size bronze is a limited edition of 10. The second sculpture was purchased for the Tabor City Tribune, and the bronze Newsboy's paper was changed to reflect their historical headline. I am presently seeking other historical headlines for the remaining 8 in the edition. A small sculpture was also created as an edition of 100, and are often purchased as awards and recognition for those in the newspaper industry. This was first documented on my website at www.creativesculpture.com. Just click on the educational link and drop down to the Newsboy Journal. Oh, there is much more information on the site than I can share here in this short video. I especially love the educational resources for teachers and students. Students and I cover everything from yellow journalism, history of the newsboy, period clothing, games, politics, and much more. Just click the next page at the end of each page to read the entire journal. Let me recap some things here in this video. This was not my first newspaper-associated sculpture. I created the Jessie for the Houston Chronicle. To begin this Newsboy project, I found a young boy, Dusty, to be my model and picked up a rented costume from a costume store to use for my initial sitting. Many photographs were taken of different poses to present to the client. I continued to search for the inspiration for the sculpture through the entire process. My client had a painting of a newsboy that was their inspiration, and I searched the internet for old photographs of newsboys. I was also delighted to find the movie Newsies. The most emotional inspiration was not visual at all, but instead came from a history professor who wrote an article about death of a newsboy. The article talks about a newsboy named Skinny who died. It intrigued me so much that as my own memory of the newsboy, I have a tribute to Skinny carved into my bronze Newsboy's paper. My client decided on a final pose, and then the work begins. There were 2 newsboys being made, a small maquette to be cast as a limited edition 100, and then a large sculpture as an edition of 10. I measured my model and began to create the maquette, or small version of the sculpture. Beginning with wire, hot clay is put over the wire until a mass is formed. My reference is very important, and it helps me to gather the information that is necessary to create this artwork. Slowly I began the process of roughing in hands, feet, and body. Some parts are so tiny they must be sculpted with dental tools and straight pins. While roughing in the small newsboy, I still continued to research the clothing of that period. That is when I discovered that period clothes for boys were impossible to find. Apparently they wore them out, where little girls were not allowed to play in their good dresses. Vintage Pattern Lending Library was very helpful. They sent me a pattern for a young newsboy outfit with knickers. Oh, I learned so much about the outfits of those days as I shared the history on the online journal with the students. It was fascinating. As I worked on the small newsboy, I began to collect the items needed for the large newsboy sculpture, sewing the outfit for Dusty and finding the proper boots. I could have probably picked up the boots from Amazon Dry Goods had Dusty's mom not had some to use. I also began to sketch out the armature. Some artists take real clothes and put them on a sculpted body, stiffening them up with wax and then making a mold for casting. I've done this in the past with the sculpture of Alex, but I'm going to sculpt the newsboy clothes. Slowly the small newsboy gets closer to completion. I pay special attention to detail, even lacing up thread to the miniature shoes. Sometimes the sculpting on such small body parts is easier done if they're cut away from the body. That is what is done with the head, hand, and arms. Once the sculpture is complete, a rubber mold is made. Waxes are poured into these rubber molds. 1 wax will be needed for each bronze casting. I'll go into the mold making process in much greater detail, as well as the bronze casting and the placement of the life-size newsboy in video 2 of the newsboy. An armature is created for the life-size sculpture. This armature is made of plumbing pipe, chicken wire, and spray foam. The armature is kind of a skeleton for the piece and allows me to add clay without adding a great deal of weight. The head and hands are created separately from the body and added later. The clay is once again heated up in crockpots and added to the sculpture. Slowly, the sculpture morphs into a human form. I compare my small wax to the maquette often to check for proportions and designs. I did purchase real suspenders, added real buttons and shoe brads to my sculpture. The rest of the clothing was sculpted. As I near the completion of the life-size Newsboy, the first small bronze Newsboys are picked up from the foundry. To carve the Texas Press historical headline and the life-size Newsboy, I covered real newspapers in wax and carved their masthead and headline in the wax. A similar process will be done for the other 9 life-size bronzes if headlines are changed to represent their historical headline. I pay attention to all the details, filling in the crevices to help with the next part of the process, creating the mold for the bronze casting of this life-size Newsboy, which can be seen in part 2 of the video. The sculpture is complete and ready for that process, but before it is taken apart, my model Dusty comes to my studio to confront the image of himself as a 1920s newsboy. The sculpting is only a portion of this process. Please visit part 2 for the completion of the sculpture. If you are interested in more information about the small newsboys or purchasing a large newsboy sculpture, or if you'd like to read the entire Newsboy journal complete with educational material for teachers and students, please visit my website at www.creativesculpture.com. Thank you.
Would you like a newspaper? That would be 1 penny, sir.